Many Constant Worlds is a meta-disjointed journey through the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. I am Kat, she, her, and I am just very burnt out.
I'm Taryn, he, they, and I'm looking into the face of...
the abyss.
Yeah. Staring into the face of burnt-outedness.
Just a reminder that this will be our last episode of the year. Merry Christmas to you all. We will be taking January off. We are going to finish Dr. Sleep, so there will be one more part, and it will be a very early January release. And then the rest of January, we are out for a bit. But after that, we're gonna either be reading The Dead Zone or Salem's Lot. I'm not entirely sure just yet which one we're gonna go with first. I want to read Salem's Lot.
I want to read Salem's Lot.
So it might
we'll be back. If we do Salem's Lot, we're back to one that not only have I read, but I read as a teenager. So
we might do Salem's Lot before The Dead Zone then, because we both want to read that. And I think it would be really nice to do something we want to do for ourselves for once.
That mini-series came out. I can stop getting spoilers for it.
So, yeah, we will very likely, it sounds like, possibly just be doing Salem's Lot at the beginning of
someday we'll go back to The Gunslinger.
We're almost there. We just got to get through Salem's Lot and The Dead Zone, as far as I know.
Really?
Yeah, we just got to get through those two books, and then we get to finish The Gunslinger and start the drawing of the three. So, we actually will get to go into our second season if we ever get to the second book.
Shit.
So, we are reading Dr. Sleep, which has a boatload of trigger warnings. So, here are your content warnings. Please take care of yourselves. Do not suffer. All right, let's see how many of these I can do in a breath. Now it's a challenge.
Yeah. Gotta try to make it fun.
Yeah. Because these all suck so much.
Is that a trigger warning, that we try to make the trigger warnings fun?
We try to make the podcast fun, but this is a Stephen King podcast, and it's really upsetting sometimes.
Oh, man. That's part of why we have to take January off.
Yeah. So, we have alcoholism, child death, addiction, death, murder, violence, child abuse, kidnapping, blood, torture, substance use, substance abuse, injury detail, gore, body horror, there I had to breathe, death of a parent, cancer, terminal illness, domestic abuse, grief, sexual assault, medical content, physical abuse, pedophilia, sexual content, gun violence, vomit, sexual violence, mental illness, stalking, suicidal thoughts, medical trauma, racial slurs, incest, racism, infidelity, car accident, and misogyny.
Two breaths?
I think I took more than that because I was dying. I probably should have tried drinking something before.
Drinking something, and then, you hyperventilate a little bit, and then take, a really big breath, and... Yeah. We'll train before the next one.
Well, we're still working on it. I always have to have a goal to work towards.
Yeah.
Trying to get out the content warnings in one breath. Also, I can't get out the content warnings of a Stephen King book in one breath. So we read part 2, Empty Devils of Dr. Sleep. This is the sequel to The Shining, in which we are following Dan Torrance through his shit show of a life.
It's getting better.
Trauma can do that, That's okay. He's doing his best. He's actually putting in a lot of effort, especially in part 2. So part 2 just really made me personally dislike Abra's parents, more than I already did. I will happily dive into that more later, though, because I have many rants about her piece of shit parents. Her great-grandmother has cancer. Lucy goes to help take care of her. Abra comes and visits on the weekends, basically, leaving her and her useless father, Dave, to take care of themselves. Really, it's her taking care of her father more than I think is appropriate for a 13-year-old girl. She's not his fucking wife. Sadly enough, this is not where any of the childlike stuff comes up. It's just fucked up families, okay? And it's not okay what they're doing to their daughter.
He shouldn't have to get the mail, okay?
My biggest issue was her doing his laundry.
I know.
That made me enraged. I'm like, you are a grown-ass man. I can understand you need to do your own laundry. You're 13 now. You got to start learning. And even just helping out to some extent.
Yeah.
But the way that it's said, it's like, no, she's expected to help do her dad's laundry so what, he can sit there and type up stories all fucking day? Fuck Dave. Fuck Lucy. They're terrible parents. I have many thoughts. I will I will
I'm
rage
sorry.
later. Abra sees the baseball boy's missing picture. Rose the Hat connects with Abra while the True Knot is grocery shopping in Sidewinder. Abra causes an earthquake, and then the neighbors have an earthquake party because that's a thing, I guess? Seriously, though, do people do that?
I never felt an earthquake until I moved here.
Okay.
And it's not anything that has happened
Is
here.
Is this an East Coast thing, maybe? Like, if you have an earthquake, you have a party?
Maybe it's a small town thing.
Okay.
I have absolutely no fucking idea.
If you have ever experienced an earthquake party, please tell us more. This is not a thing us West Coast people are familiar with.
Or at least not us. Maybe we don't know enough people. Let us know if earthquake parties are...
Like legitimately, I want to know more. I'm very
If you
curious.
have friends, do you have earthquake parties?
Is it just an excuse to have a party?
That kind of feels a little bit how it... Yeah.
Abra connects with Dan. They meet in person, and the story does acknowledge how fucking weird that is.
So much.
Dan tries to seek out Dick Halloran, who he lost touch with when his life started taking him down some shitty paths. Dick died on 1/19/1999, but Dick reaches out via a dying hospice patient and learns a little more about the True Knot, they being the empty devils that this part is named after. Abra's great-grandmother's care is getting more difficult, and Lucy plans to have her put into Dan's hospice. Meanwhile, the True Knot is struggling with their own internal issues, that being the fucking measles. Downside of feeding on children is you take the risk of picking up their disease. Though it is surprising this didn't happen sooner, seeing as we didn't have measles vaccines until the 1960s. Though it's clear this is a commentary on pushback to vaccines and how preventable disease can devastate a community, even an all-powerful evil filled with supposed immortals.
Yep.
Anyways, after talking with Abra, Dan goes to John, that's her doctor, and the one that Dan called when he was having his moment rather than calling his sponsor, to ask him to go to Iowa to try and find the baseball boy's glove. Abra thinks with the glove she can find the woman who has been tapping into her and the group that is coming for her. Rose the Hat plans to try and take an astral trip to learn about Abra, but Abra has learned to set an alarm in her mind, so when Rose shows up, she gets the script flipped on her, then to rub salt in the wound, Grandpa Flick does die. John agrees to go with Dan to Iowa, and while they are traveling, we get the drop. Dan says the line, "The other world's one from the Dark Tower," that Jake Chambers, delivers. Dan and John find the baseball boy, Trevor's body, with Abra's help, and she was able to tune into Dan's mind to pinpoint the spot, get the glove, and then make their way back to the stone house because they have reached the point of needing to involve Abra's shitty parents now. Abra tries to prep her father with the info ahead of Dan and John's arrival. Billy ends up joining them eventually too. Abra tunes into the glove and finds out that the True Knot is on their way, that Barry also has the measles, and they're hoping that aside from feeding them, that Abra has been vaccinated and feeding on her can help them be protected. The group starts trying to plan next steps, including using Abra as potential bait. And with the mention of Sidewinder, Dan knows he's going to have to return to where the Overlook once stood. That is the gist of what happened in here. So a lot happened here. This is a third of the book. We get the point that is cited on Stephen King's website as the connection to the Dark Tower series, aside from all of the other fucking things, which is the shared line of Jake Chambers. And I was sitting next to Taryn when they read that line, and it was kind of hilarious.
I got pretty excited. I do think it's interesting that anti-vax is taking out the True Knot. I mean, we don't know that for sure. Maybe the kid couldn't get vaccinated for some reason.
What's interesting about that is that while I appreciate let's look at the anti-vax thing and how fucked up it is, it doesn't really make sense. They've been feeding on children for a long time. The odds that they haven't fed on other kids that were vaccinated seems really slim.
The way it seems like it's being presented is more that they are changing and that they are becoming susceptible to disease because they also are catching colds and things like that, which are just...
Imagine them with COVID.
They are looking at it as... oh, this kid wasn't, they are always pushing it. They aren't looking inwards at themselves at all. Nothing is their fault. It's always the rubes. It's always the rubes' fault. That kid wasn't vaccinated, so we got measles from the kid. Not, we horribly tortured a child, and the evil that we're doing is... fundamentally changing us. They refuse to do any self-reflection. I wonder if it's more that But I do think it's funny that there's also this commentary of like, well, I hope she's vaccinated.
She'll cure us.
Because not only is it always the Rube's fault, but the Rubes also have the answer. They always have what's going to fix them as well. Like, they have no answers, and they are nothing. Empty Devils is such a good name for them because they can cause pain, but overall they
do nothing.
Yeah, they're useless.
They're very passive.
Yeah.
You know, at least Pennywise was out there working up that child fear. Pennywise was working for it. She worked hard for that money.
I think that one of the first images that you're given when he's describing them as the RV people that you get behind and you're losing your mind because they won't go anything over the speed limit. They might even be going slower and they're just meandering. That's such a perfect way to describe these people. I knew who he meant, but we have Burning Man, so we are intimately aware of the fucking camper people.
Oh my god, the True Knot was out there at Burning Man.
Of course they were.
They had to be.
Like, that's the perfect place for them to hide.
Really is.
That is their people. I think I enjoy the True Knot parts of this book the most of all the parts. They are the most well described, and I love Rose the Hat. I love Crow Daddy. I'm not supposed to love Crow Daddy, and I fucking love Crow Daddy.
See, I would argue, I think that you are. Like, I don't feel like Stephen King would have put that much work into the True Knot and how much detail he has given them. We have never seen many of his, like, villains, so to speak, this way. We don't get to see them this much. Like, a great example, I would say, would be Annie Wilkes. We're in her house through Misery. Overall, we still mostly see her through the eyes of Paul and how he sees Annie. Whereas in this, we actually get the True Knot's side. We get to see it. And that was kind of cool, even in, like, the few peekaboo moments where you actually got to be in its brain and how it was looking at, like, the Losers Club and its place and making its little plans. They were very few moments. Yeah. And they only came towards the end of the book when we were getting into face-off moments so that we could kind of see its preparations for the losers showing up, both as adults and as kids. But overall, we don't get to see that side of everything. He put so much time and effort into the True Knot when he didn't have to.
Yeah.
Like, this would be much shorter of a book if he had not. And this is like a 600-page book. I think that was his intention, especially because Rose the Hat is so likable and such an iconic character through this. She is one of the three main characters. It's Dan, Abra, and Rose. Yeah. They are the main characters. She's charismatic. She's smart. She's powerful. You aren't necessarily meant to side with them because ultimately they are the bad guys. She is chasing down a little girl with the intent of feeding off of her. You are meant to enjoy the ride.
I think you're right. And there's a big difference between... So, in it, there is no... Not in the child sections, not in the adult sections. There is no point at which you're like, man, I want to go live with Pennywise.
Yes.
But there is something seductive about the life of the True Knot. Like, there is something about how they live where you're like, unlimited money, arguably immortal life, just kind of going around doing what you want. Like, there's drawbacks, but they are vampires. That is how vampire lore kind of is. They're very well done. Their life compared to Dan's life. Which would you rather go and join?
And to be fair, both are meandering through it for a long time.
Yeah.
I do think that there's meant to be something appealing so that when they approach people like Snakebite Andy, well, obviously she was also threatened. Like, I mean, you can technically say no, but you can't actually say no. It still has to be enticing.
Both are presented as parasitic at the beginning.
Yeah.
And blaming their problems on everyone else and blaming what has happened to them. When we first meet Dan, it's Deanie is the reason, like, she wanted this Coke. She's the reason that I don't have money anymore. I can steal her money. It's her own fault that this is happening to her kid. Like, I don't need to interfere. I don't need to be involved in this. I'm gonna steal this unhoused guy's blanket. I'm gonna do these things and be very selfish because why wouldn't I? All these things happen to me. Why can't I do this. The same, like, the True Knot, obviously.
Yeah.
They are not only selfish with the rubes, they're selfish with each other, because that's kind of the point of them. That is really brought home with Abra in this section, where she doesn't want to deal with the Bradley Trevor situation, but she sees her book opens to the, like, civic responsibility or government responsibility, and she understands, like, I have this ability. It's her Spider-Man moment. Oh, man.
We're all scarred by...
So do you think it's that Stephen King just knew it from the comics, knew it from the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies, or it's because this should be around when the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies were coming out? Do you think it was that was fresh on his mind, and he's an Andrew Garfield Spider-Man fan?
I mean, I would love to believe that.
That's what my headcanon is, that he had just seen the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies and was like, this is the quintessential Peter Parker. Maybe he ships Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone.
That is a good point, especially because, like, Dan enters this and he has no community around him. And the True Knots community is slowly dying off, and they're getting smaller and smaller over the course of this book. And Dan has to build his group out because he's lost, his mother, and he distanced himself from Dick. And then one thing you really do need to do when you try to get clean of all the shit that you run around is a lot of times you have to cut out people who would have, helped lead you right back down that path. It doesn't sound like Dan really connected with anybody anyway. He was always meandering around.
Yeah.
And now he's actually stayed in one place. He has a job he's good at that people legitimately look to him to be Dr. Sleep, and he has friends out of, old dudes, but they're his friends.
Yeah.
And they are people he can trust. When he calls Billy and says, like, I need you to, like, stake out this little girl's house, I promise it's not weird, Billy looks at him and understands, because Billy obviously has a little bit of shine to himself as well, but he understands, like, no, you're not being a creep. We're legitimately trying to protect someone, and John Dalton, I think is his last name. He's the same way of just like, yeah, you've always kind of seemed like you just know shit. I'm a little concerned about this because I'm a pediatrician, but I trust you, and I'm going to continue to trust you because you haven't given me a reason not to. You have been very upstanding since I've known you. So yeah, we are our community now. This is your group, Dan, and we will ride or die for you. Because I do think if he called his sponsor would help too, but his sponsor would do it with a lecture.
I think that's interesting too, because the True Knot community, they don't actually seem to like each other.
No.
They do and they don't, but they just don't have...
They're there because convenience, because of powers. They needed Snakebite Andy because she's a sleeper. She can put people to sleep. Rose, Barry, and Grandpa Flick were the ones who could actually sense steamheads. I don't know what some of the others offer. It's never really made clear. Some of them, it sounds like, might be there simply because people didn't want to be alone. They're there out of necessity.
And when Dan starts assembling his, team...
his Avengers.
Yeah, it's a group of people who actually respect each other. We don't really see it from the rest of the True Knots perspective. Maybe it's just Rose the Hat that only has bad things to say about everybody in her head, but she only has bad things to say about everybody.
And I think that that's very indicative, but the way that they also tend to bicker from time to time. It's never huge fights, but it is an RV convoy because some people obviously don't mix well. That's normal. You live in close quarters with people, and they constantly have to live in the same, campgrounds. They can never take a break from each other.
Because how else are they going to eat? But I think also when you feed off of pain and anguish, how can anything good live inside of you?
Exactly. You are filling yourself with evil.
Yeah, you've chosen a path at that point.
Which is why you also can't understand why these rubes are able to do anything against you. Abra shouldn't be able to defeat Rose the Hat, but because she has her own community of support figures. Because she does have someone like Dan, teaching her, here's how you're going to do it. Yeah. Here's how you're going to keep them out. Then she's able to pretend she's Daenerys from Game of Thrones, which I thought was very interesting choice.
Such a great choice.
And at first I was like, wow, this 13-year-old's reading Game of Thrones, and it's like, well, she's obviously quite smart. I can definitely say, like, I was handed books outside of my age range, so were you, obviously. But also, of course she would connect with Daenerys. Daenerys is 13 in the first book, and she becomes the mother of dragons. It's the person she could most identify with, I imagine.
Yeah.
Because even, like, the Stark kids, well, I'm sure some of them were probably, because Sansa seems like she was probably likely in the same age range. Sansa was fairly, like, demure and trying to be like she wanted to be the queen.
Yeah.
She had to behave differently, whereas like Daenerys wants to be a different kind of queen.
Yeah.
She also wants to be the queen, but she wants to be the queen with the power, not the queen that's sitting next to her husband.
Yeah.
Loved that.
No, I really liked that too. And I liked that she had something to compare herself to that was female and strong and something that she could hold up and be like, this is who I want to, and that she was seeing herself as, and that is, because that call out in the books. There's a lot to be said about Daenerys only being 13. We'll gloss over some of that.
Yeah.
This is not a George R. R. Martin podcast.
We'd never get to finish that one.
Yeah. But she did pick a 13-year-old who is strong and who is, you would know more. I haven't read. I've only seen the show, okay?
I have read the first book. The show at least aged up Daenerys. I do believe they aged her up some, and they certainly aged her up over the course of the series. I thought that was an interesting pick, that yes, that was who she went with. By all means, Daenerys is forced into some shit she doesn't want to be a part of, which is why she's a 13-year-old marrying a grown-ass man. That aside, I can see why, if this kid actually read Game of Thrones at that young age, why that would be her go-to. We didn't have characters like Brienne yet. I mean, yeah, you want the one that walks through the fire and gets the dragon eggs at the end of this. That's who you want to be. You want to become the mother of dragons.
For sure.
So,
well, Lord knows, Lucy was busy and Dave wasn't paying attention.
I know.
So,
yeah, though I fucking hate her parents so much. So fucking much! You know what, I'm just gonna dive into that now, because I hate her parents. So I already mentioned on our first Dr. Sleep episode that Lucy bothered me because she was just wishing her kid's special thing would go away. Like, I get that it's scary, but your kid is literally making themselves happy by playing a fucking piano or something, and you've got a problem with that. Like, teach them the appropriate time, like maybe 2 a.m. It freaks your family out at first, especially if they're asleep. I get it. I can understand that. But this constant fucking wish that the kid would just be normal. I wish you'd just be normal. It just goes on to make so many fucking issues later. Like, to the point that we're having the problems that we have in part 2. It is their fault for this constant, like, I wish you'd just be fucking normal. Yeah, well, your kid can read your fucking mind, so they know what you're thinking. When Lucy leaves to take care of her grandmother, Abra helps out more. Totally reasonable. 13-year-old. I already said, bothers me that she does her dad's laundry. That was a line that there was no way I was ever going to side with Dave and Lucy again after that. The fact that that was acceptable in their household. I can get pitching in, I can get doing your own laundry, and occasionally helping out with dads, if dad's like really busy and on like a deadline. But Dave is so dismissive of his kid because he gets into his writing zone to the point that she's able to meet with a grown-ass man more than once.
Yeah.
And while Dan turns out to be a safe person and is aware of the fact that this is not a good look and this is not a good thing, Dave's daughter was able to actively go out into the world and meet a grown-ass man in his 40s, not once, but at least twice, in person. We'll forget about the, like, mind connections because nobody can meet her that.
Yeah,
But she is able to go and meet Dan on a bench and sit there and chat with him for time. Dave has no fucking clue.
You know, if they hadn't made her so freaked out about her abilities, maybe she wouldn't have reached out to... I mean, it's good. He's like the only person in the area who could help her with it, but I'm just saying they could have been more, like, aware of him.
Oh, God, yeah. They could have just listened to the damn great-grandmother who had any idea what she was talking about.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous.
I'm not saying that you have to be educated or that you have to be... But I do want to point out that it's not like she's some never made it through middle school from the old country, like...
Yeah.
Like, super superstitious. Like, she's a very educated, well-regarded... But they're still saying, like, oh... Grandma, you don't fucking know what you're talking about.
Right.
And she's like, okay, whatever. Your kid's putting spoons on the ceiling and you're not listening to me. Cool. Like,
Exactly.
I love cheddar, so.
And then, like, when Aber tries to, like, tell Dave, he insists that he and his wife would know if Aber still had her special abilities. Because, you know, this man is so attentive to his daughter, who met a grown-ass man multiple times.
I do want to say, only because the first time I tried to come out of the closet, I was not a whole lot older than Abra. It wasn't a whole lot different.
No,
the whole, we would know, and it's like, no, you wouldn't fucking know, you didn't fucking know, you haven't fucking known. So, like, I
get it. It's because they feel embarrassed.
Oh, yeah,
stupid,
100%.
And that's how they're going to try and brush it off because they don't want to deal with their feelings. They need to make yours feel like less because that would mean they'd have to admit maybe they weren't paying enough fucking attention.
I am not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying that was, like, one of the most realistic things.
Oh, no. I think that's what makes it so infuriating is that Dave and Lucy are fully believable as humans, and I hate them. I hate these humans. But she is actively telling him that she still does this shit, and he is still arguing that he knows better. Because, you know, why? What? He's older? I don't fucking know. But she has to fucking, like, perform for him.
Yeah.
To show him, no, I can still do it. This all leads me to, like, my next point, which is that Dave and Lucy convinced themselves that it got better because that's what they wanted, which in general, Abra's an accessory. They just wanted a child because that is what you do. Neither fucking one of them seems like they really put in much effort with their kid. Lucy does seem like she puts in more between the two. I'm all for, if you're a parent, you should have, you know, parent time. You should get to still be a person. I do not disagree that you have your own life to also still operate. But your kid is not an accessory to your life. Doesn't work like a bracelet. You can't just take it off. They are not extensions of you, and they're not just going to be the people you want them to fucking be. They are their own fucking people. Complete fucking people! Abra spends hours trying to tell Dave what's going on while she waits for Dan and John to show up at the house. Hours pass. And she spends that time trying to convince him this shit is happening. And this man, rather than deal with those fucking feelings that he has, his emotional seizure leads him to, like, I get that he wants to protect his daughter, but his emotional seizure leads him to completely ignoring the things she is telling him. Of, yes, I have been talking to this grown-ass man. You didn't notice, by the way, Dad, I've been talking to this grown-ass man. Him and my pediatrician are coming here right now with a thing because there's this group of people who are going to try and kill me. Yeah. And you are more worried about those two dudes than this other part. Even if you think that I've been manipulated, why aren't you calling services or something at this point?
Yeah.
And he does say, like, John is the reason that he doesn't call the cops because he does trust John, which he should trust John. John is the person that he and the great-grandmother go down to and be like, hey, our kid's doing something weird. Can you come to her birthday party and, like, check it out? You went and got this man's professional opinion about the spoons on the ceiling. You sought him out for this. You damn well better fucking trust him. You already showed him this power. Why is any of this bothering you? You are already aware that there is other shit going on in this world, but you're a goddamn moron. I've got so many rants about this. The other thing that just immediately upset me with Dave was when Abra does come to tell him, like, hey, I got a problem. He immediately goes to, she's pregnant.
Yeah, she's 13, and he thinks she's pregnant. It's not like it's never happened, but for that to be his immediate thought, maybe that is what dads think. She's a child.
Exactly.
She's an actual child.
His immediate response was so upsetting. Yes, it does happen. I'm not going to pretend like it doesn't. No matter what, your 13-year-old was essayed. At
that age, no matter what happened, that's all that really could have happened.
Yeah, your kid was essayed if we are at the point of pregnancy at 13. Your response should not be like, oh God, she's pregnant. It's, oh God, somebody touched my daughter.
Somebody hurt my daughter.
Like, your response shouldn't be about the pregnancy. It should be about your daughter.
Somebody is hurting you. I think I would assume as a kid, if I go to my parents and I say, like, I'm in trouble, I'm thinking they're thinking, you've stole something, you've broke something, you've done a big bad. That is so outside the realm of where I was as a 13-year-old.
From the life that Abra has painted, like, as a picture of her life.
Yeah.
It's pretty far for her, too. Like, it sounds like she kissed a boy, but that was it.
I can also see being a first thought, but immediately followed with, she's too young. I just can't. But is this another symptom of Stephen King writes every child too old?
Yes.
Because she has also been written like a little too old.
She has.
It's not as bad as other kids have been, but I do think, like, maybe...
It's reading Game of Thrones and being 13.
Yeah. Dave has a lot of faults. Some of them, I think, do come from...
Oh, I think a lot of them do. I also think a lot of them come from the fact that he wasn't a parent to teenagers.
Yeah.
In the 2000s. We look at it where we have straight up children in sexual situations. If that was normal then, it shouldn't have been. If we even put that out there, maybe there were more 13-year-olds coming in going, hey, Mom, Dad, I'm in trouble. And what they meant was, I'm pregnant. That is not really an issue you're going to have as much in, like, 2012.
Yeah.
We hopefully have fixed some of that problem.
I have to say, Abra seemed a lot more normal in that way of, like, still just doodling names and has, like, made out with a boy.
Yeah.
Like, that's...
She's relatively normal. I do think that some of Dave's problem does come from that, but it does not change that the effect is I fucking hate her parents. They're really awful people.
The line that really got me was after he had met Dan and was talking to John, was just when he was still thinking towards it and had the thought of, like, this man has been dating my daughter. Like, regardless of what kind, he has been dating my daughter. No! They've met outside a library a couple of times and talked. That kind of thinking is the kind of thinking where no two people can be friends. Particularly not of the opposite sex. And that line really rubbed me the wrong way. But I can see how if you are the kind of person Dave seems to be, you'd have that thought. That fucking bothered me.
So I think he goes on about, like, oh, you probably met her on the internet. And it's like, your daughter just showed you she still has mind powers.
In this situation, why is his thought after he has been given all this, regardless of how it's been, he has been dating my daughter? The fuck are you talking about, sir?
Yeah.
What the fuck are you talking about? I am still kind of on the fence with Lucy. She had a lot going on and she was made to be absent through this portion. I don't know how I feel about her. Currently, she still seems like she's doing her best. I see more what you mean with the idea of she just wants her kid to be normal. I feel like that's not fair. You can't help how you feel.
You can't help how you feel. You can hope for, like, oh man, you're gonna have a rough life. I really wish you were just normal because this is gonna be rough. But Lucy and Dave make zero effort to try and help their daughter with this situation. They know you have this special ability. They certainly like it when they can take advantage of it. Then they love that, oh yeah, you know, she still has that thing, so maybe I won't have to tell her this really upsetting news because she'll already know. They certainly like it when it works in their favor, but they have made little to no effort to try and help their daughter, like teaching her, hey, appropriate times for when we do these things. You know, their daughter has turned out good regardless of their lack of involvement with this very big thing that she is able to do, because she did reach out to a stranger to help her deal with it, because she did, along with her regular education, see that about civics and go, I have a responsibility to try and help this situation because I know what happened to that boy. Also, they're going to come for me next, and ignoring it isn't going to change that. She turned out to be a good kid at the end of all of this. And it's not like they're doing a truly terrible job. They make sure she's taken care of. But they did not put any effort into, hey, you have this thing that neither of us have. You know, your great-grandmother kind of talks about it, but we've ignored her. You're telling us that you have a friend, Tony, who is kind of like you, and, you know, yeah, we're going with, oh, it's an imaginary friend. But especially because, like, you're adding in, like, his dad, Dan, who works for Hot Spice. We're not going to put any effort into trying to work this out. Hot Spice is her red rum. where no one can figure it out.
There's more options. Is he a cook? Is he like an exotic dancer? Like...
But they're so dismissive of their kid. And most parents are. I'm not going to pretend like other parents would be all up in that.
Kids say weird shit.
Kids say weird shit all the time. That's why they creep people out. That's why Children of the Corn works.
Yeah.
That is written by Stephen King, to anybody who does not know.
I forget every time.
Lots of people don't know it, so that's why I'm putting it out there. That's why Children of the Corn works. Children are creepy.
The only thing I can remember of Children of the Corn right now is Righteous Gemstone.
Either way, they were so ready to let it go. And a lot of parents would be, because it does freak them out. But their failure to help her learn, it is their failure. They failed that stage of parenting. They did not nail that.
No.
They decided, we don't want to deal with this, so we're not gonna.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, bye.
I would say it's easy because neither of us are parents.
No, it's very true.
But these are fictional parents. They could get it right very easily. They could have a perfect baby so easy. This could be fine. I think we're going to continue to criticize every fictional parent we come across. We don't criticize real parents the same way. Real parenting is hard and different. Fictional parenting is so easy. You write it different. Obviously, you can write fictional parenting hard. It's written the way that it's written. I wonder if it's also, he knew they were going to get compared with Jack and Wendy. Obviously, you have to. Like, that's the whole point, is to compare everything in this book with... We have done a great job of not comparing every single point of this book with the other book. Look at us. We're not, like, I'm sure at some point we will, but we're not right now. But it's really hard sometimes not to. What
does help with that, though, with not just constantly comparing it to The Shining, is that it is such a different type of story. It can be a sequel, and it is. Like, I do feel like this is a sequel that makes sense so far, but it is not the same kind of story that The Shining was. So while you do get parents that you can compare, it's not identical.
I think the fact that The Shining takes place almost entirely locked in this one place, and this is fucking everywhere the whole
over the course of years versus months,
makes it so different. There is really no comparing. That alone makes it so different. Even though we have three main characters, we have an adult man, an adult woman, and a child. Very gifted child. There are some strong similarities, but it's so different.
It is still a good book.
Very good.
Despite my hatred of Lucy and Dave, it's still a book I would say, like, it is worth reading. And if you did enjoy this Shining, you would probably enjoy this because it is a continuation of the same themes, but it is not identical, and that makes it nice. I'm glad we didn't just rehash again and again what we did in the first one. Like, we watched a sequel movie this weekend. Yeah. They were rehashing the bits from the first movie.
It was almost the exact same.
Have the familiarity that you have from your first thing. You have to pull that over. But if you're just repeating the exact same stuff,
I feel like it's a hard balance to hit. This has been really good so far for hitting that.
Stephen King has found a good way to do it. So.
Which is a surprise, because I had lost a lot of faith after it. Especially for the long books. I am impressed. Especially because this is so connected to it. I was very concerned.
To this point, I probably still prefer The Shining over Dr. Sleep. But it's not like it's a huge margin there.
Yeah.
They're both quite good.
I am not saying this in the same way that I said it about it, of there is things here that need to be edited out. I would like this one more if there were things that were cut.
Yes.
But it's not that I think that they shouldn't be there. The Shining was just shorter, so I could eat it. Yeah. I could absolutely just rip through it. This one has so much more in it.
It's a much more dense book.
Absolutely, but I don't know that I could point out anything in it that I'm like, this is absolutely unnecessary. There's still repetition, but it's not in the same way of like, no, we just don't, I don't think I could go through it and just strike out bits.
Yeah.
I don't need, this was literally a paragraph ago. I don't need it repeated again.
Yeah. No, that's exactly my issue with it too, is that it's very dense.
Yeah.
I think that if I were to take some stuff and remove it, it would probably be like cutting down some of the descriptions.
Yeah.
But that's because I personally just don't really read descriptions that closely.
Yeah.
I don't need them. My mind puts on a movie for me. I know what things look like in my head, and it doesn't matter what your description says. My brain's gonna probably decide anything it wants to decide.
That's a criticism I've always heard about Stephen King. I think people kind of go one of two ways, where you really enjoy it, or it's just, I don't need this much.
Please stop describing this.
I have found a lot of the descriptions around the True Knot to be really vivid and compelling. I have found a lot of the descriptions around Dan to be too much.
Tedious.
Yes, tedious. Thank you. I think I scan a lot of the abra bits because it's just the least interesting, which tells you that I that is probably the most tedious. I am probably missing a lot in those descriptions. I've already said I like the True Knot bits the most, so I'm willing to pay more attention. I wonder if I was younger, the abra bits would be more interested there, and a little less with Dan. But we are Dan's age now. So that's a little more like, okay, that's, this is where I'm at. Like,
I also think that there is something to be said for the fact that Stephen King has never been a 13-year-old girl.
Yeah, I've been impressed.
So he was never going to write that well. Like, I'm really looking towards, I wouldn't say looking forward to, but looking towards reading Carrie. Because, like, after reading On Writing and knowing that he hates Carrie White, he's never been a girl, to my knowledge. And so I do think that does not help his writing the Abra bits, because he doesn't actually know what it's like there. He can listen to his wife and to his daughter and maybe any granddaughters he might have about what it is like at that age, or if, like, even just seeing his grandchildren and his children. But it is not quite the same, because frankly, that little girl should be more irritated by the fact that she can't pull her hair up the right way and freaking the fuck out about it because she can't handle middle school.
Yeah, there's not been enough emotional fluctuation. Like, considering we've seen her from newborn to 13, she's just been way too just level.
Yes, it's not like that. It's not smooth and easy. None of that is, like...
When she started crying on the bench with Dan, and he was like, you can't start crying. People are going to notice this. You can't start crying. And she just, like, looks down and sucks it up. I'm like, absolutely not. No 13-year-old girl can just look down and turn that off that way. Yeah. Adult people cannot just look down and turn that off that way. 13-year-old girl, I do not believe. Show me the 13-year-old girl who can just stop it. Unless he's trying to say that's a shine ability, that you can just...
Her shine is like the opposite of Carrie's.
Like, is Carrie's ability shine?
I don't know. I guess we'll have to find out when we get to Carrie. But, I mean, I feel like if Snakebite Andy's power is making people sleep, and that's kind of a shining ability, it sounds like Carrie's ability could be shine, because it's telekinetic.
Yeah. It almost seems like what we're finding out with the True Knot is that all of it is shine, and you can just kind of go one way or the other. You can pull a Dan Torrance, and you can use your abilities to help people and do good and go this direction, or you can go True Knot and you can fucking do bad shit.
Yeah.
With your abilities. I don't know if that was as hammered out before, but maybe I could see it. I could see it with the way that things have been, but I will say, when we were in the Eyes of the Dragon era, it kind of seemed like we were a little more like, there's two different kinds of abilities.
Yeah.
And now we've moved more towards, no, it's all just one, and you can choose how you use it. But we'll see. I think we'll see.
Yeah.
Because I don't feel like it was as much, oh, you start out with all of the powers, and then you kind of specialize as you become an adult, which is what we're seeing now with Dr. Sleep.
No, exactly. And I don't know that it was all hammered out prior to this. I think this, especially because he got the dude who had been able to chronicle a bunch of stuff for him to help him with this.
Yeah.
I think he sorted it out in this book. A lot of it, which is why we do get some changes to things.
Well, hey, once we've read all of the books, we'll go through in chronological order.
Yeah.
Oh my god, we're gonna be 100 when we're done.
Well, technically, we'll have at least gotten through the set once, and reading things
Yeah.
a second time goes much faster.
Sure. This is what will keep us immortal.
Yeah.
We
Feeding
have a
off of
quest.
Stephen King books.
Will it also keep him alive?
I mean, one can hope.
Our energy is going to keep Stephen King alive while we have to stay alive. To now do 2. We're now committing to 2.
Oh, to two. I mean,
To 2 rounds.
cause a wheel. We're never gonna stop.
Oh, God. You heard it here, folks.
Yeah, because I mean, after chronological order, well, there's 2 things there. We can do chronological order by publication and chronological order by setting. We can also read them again in the groupings of like Castle Rock, because there's a few set in Castle Rock. I don't know that we have a bunch in like Derry, Maine, or anything, but you start grouping together the like states, maybe.
So did you just create 5 now that we figured out, or is that 4?
Okay, so there's this cycle.
4
There's
spins.
chronological by publication, chronological by actual like book like timeline, and then going through based on the areas. So that's 4. We've got at least 4 cycles we gotta do.
And then there will be all the times we go through just focusing on specific characters or aspects.
Yeah.
We'll never stop.
Can't stop, won't stop.
We'll stop once Cat's dead. You are, in fact, what keeps the podcast going.
Do you want to pull our cards?
Oh, yeah. What did we have last time?
Last time we had the Queen of Pentacles, which was a nurturing figure, which really suits this. A symbol of security and sharing wealth.
Cut the deck.
Okay.
Pulled from the middle. I pulled with my left hand, which this section has talked about. I always pull with my left hand. This section has talked a lot about left hands and using your left hand for receiving and for magic and magical uses. I fucking told you Stephen King knows what he's talking about with that shit, and that somebody has done a little research into that, and I feel as though I have been proven right, but regardless, I have pulled the Justice card.
Oh.
Justice is a blonde-haired person, I would say an androgynous figure sitting on a bench. They are staring out placidly, benignly.
To be clear, Justice is not blind.
No, they are crowned, wearing a green cloak or mantle and a red robe or gown, holding scales in their left hand and a sword upright in their right hand. There's a lot more to this card, but those are the most important things.
I also enjoy the little peekaboo foot at the bottom.
Yeah, I wasn't sure whether or not I should mention that, actually.
It's just funny to me.
Yeah.
So justice is simply the representation of fairness and balance. It reminds us that we are always responsible for our actions, and that there are consequences for everything. Justice also represents truth. It encourages finding truth through facts and by being thorough. Do not be too hasty to deal out judgment before knowing the full truth.
Oh, shit.
Shit's about to go down.
I just think it's interesting that it's about responsibility and fairness and...
So with that said, we are going to be finishing Dr. Sleep. So it should just be part 3. I don't think there's another part squeezed in there at all, but just finish the dang book.
Just read it.
Matters of Life and Death. And that will be our last episode before we go dark for January.
Woo. Well, I mean, what else is there to say? Dan really said it best. There are other worlds than these.
You can email us at manyconstantworlds@gmail.com, DM us on Instagram, and check out our Patreon. All links can be found in the description of our episodes.
We work really hard for the Patreon, and Megan gets mad if we don't say that.
We work hard for that money.
So hard for that money.